Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your source material and turn complexity into, well, into compelling clarity. Today we are tackling one of the biggest economic questions out there for advanced economies. How do you actually drive a sustainable, high-value manufacturing renaissance? You hear a lot of talk about just, building more factories. But the real answer, according to the sources we've unpacked, isn't just in the products, it's in leveraging local knowledge. We're going deep on a concept called territorial servitization. I know it's a mouthful, but think of it this way. It's how a region's manufacturing backbone gets completely intertwined with its brain trust, its specialist consultants and R&D firms. The goal is to grow the whole local economy together. Okay, let's unpack this.
That's the mission today. I mean, when most people hear servitization, they think of a single company, say a jet engine maker that stops selling engines and starts selling guaranteed flight hours.
Right, a great strategy for that one firm.
A brilliant strategy, but we're looking way beyond that. We want to understand the aggregate economic outcomes. How does this synergy between making things and knowing things transform an entire local economy? How does it build resilience that protects jobs from offshoring and, major economic shocks? It's all about the benefit to the whole territory.
And we have the perfect case study to see it in action.
We do. The wind-to-energy industry in Europe, it's basically been a 30-year real-world experiment that shows exactly how this works.
Yeah, so let's start with the basics, get our footing. At the micro level, what exactly is servitization?
So put simply, it's a strategic shift for a manufacturer. They evolve their business model. They move from just a pure product focus, here's your wind turbine, good luck,
Right.
to offering this integrated package of products and services. So they're selling you guaranteed energy availability for the next 20 years. That creates stable recurring revenue, and it ties them much closer to the customer.
And to pull that off, they need a support network. That's where these knowledge-intensive business services, or KIBS, come into the picture.
Exactly. These are the specialists. We're talking about engineering consultancies, R&D labs, high-level IT firms. Their entire value is based on professional knowledge, on solving really complex problems. They are, in a way, the co-creators of value here.
So they're not just outside contractors, they're essential.
Absolutely essential. A strong local KIBS sector isn't just nice to have. It builds these shared competencies that manufacturers need to stay competitive. They're like the nerve centers, carrying new ideas and solutions between all the different firms in that local cluster.
Okay, so if I'm tracking this, territorial servitization is when you get those two pieces, the manufacturers and the KIBS, working together on a regional scale. It's the aggregated outcome. Oh wait, isn't that just a fancy way of saying companies use local consultants?
But that's the critical distinction. It goes so far beyond just simple outsourcing. It creates what the research calls a virtuous circle.
Virtuous circle.
Yes. When local manufacturing is doing well, it demands more and more sophisticated services. That demand stimulates the growth of new local KIBS firms. And then those new KIBS inject fresh innovation back into the manufacturers, making them even stronger, even more resilient. It's a self-reinforcing loop.
A feedback loop that just keeps leveling up the whole region. But for that to really work, for the benefits to stick, they have to fit together, right? That's this idea of organizational fit.
That is the secret sauce. For the whole thing to work, there has to be a value-adding fit between the manufacturers and the KIBS. It's an alignment of trust, of coordination, of just knowing how the other works. It lets them complement each other and adapt really, really quickly to changes.
Like custom-made puzzle pieces.
That's a perfect analogy. When the fit is tight, they create value that neither one could ever achieve on its own, or, by just hiring some generic consultant from halfway across the world. It's that conscious effort to build trust and tailor their skills to each other that really makes it work.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's move from theory to the messy reality of the 1990s. We're looking at these pioneer regions, Midtjylland in Denmark, northern Germany, the Basque Country in Spain.
The early days of the wind industry were incredibly uncertain. I mean, turbine designs were unstable. Companies were betting millions on tech that could be obsolete in a year. And that uncertainty is actually what kicked off the first wave of servitization.
How so?
Well, the component suppliers started offering intensive R&D services to the turbine makers. They were acting like early KIBS firms, helping everyone converge on reliable designs, like the big shift to variable speed technology.
And the manufacturers themselves, they started offering basic services too, right? Just to get customers on board.
They had to. Just basic after-sales services commissioning, a bit of monitoring, mostly to reassure these cautious early buyers that the giant spinning machines wouldn't, just fall over.
But the wild card here, the really unexpected part, came from the customers.
It's the most fascinating part of the story. In Denmark and Germany, many of the first customers were farmer cooperatives. They bought the turbines, but service contracts were either way too expensive or they just didn't exist yet. So they figured out how to do the routine operation and maintenance themselves.
So the farmers were writing the first maintenance manuals, basically.
You're not far off. And that little detail, that farmer-driven O&M, it wasn't just about fixing things. It was building that organizational fit we were talking about. By pooling all this practical knowledge, the whole region got a massive strategic advantage.
Which was?
Efficient technological allocation. This service feedback loop, it acted like an early warning system. It helped the entire cluster figure out which technologies were reliable and which were duds, so they could allocate their R&D money more efficiently than their global competitors.
So they avoided betting millions on the wrong horse.
Precisely. It made the whole region incredibly resilient to technological shifts. And just as importantly, because the local customers were handling the day-to-day maintenance, it had a huge regional benefit.
Early globalization and job creation.
Exactly. Since the routine stuff was handled locally, the manufacturers were free to focus their resources on improving the product and on rapid international sales. We saw some firms getting 50% of their revenue from abroad incredibly early on. This made them stable, fast-growing employers, and the whole region became an exporter of both turbines and expertise.
Okay, let's move into the 2000s. The industry just exploded, growth was massive, but the customers changed. We're not talking about farmer co-ops anymore.
No, now we're talking about huge utilities and independent power producers, IPPs, and they weren't buying one turbine. They were buying an entire wind park, and they demanded one thing above all else: guaranteed performance.
And that changed the game for services.
Completely. It forced servitization to deepen. Manufacturers had to offer truly advanced services designed to manage risk for the customer. We're talking long-term service level agreements, or SLAs, backed by complex remote monitoring and predictive maintenance.
So winning a big contract wasn't about having the cheapest machine anymore.
Not at all. It became all about your ability to guarantee performance levels over 20 years. And that guarantee was 100% service-based. This is where the local organizational fit became even more crucial.
It couldn't just be R&D anymore.
No. Now the component suppliers had to achieve co-specialization in services. They had to offer specialized logistics, engineering support, all to directly back up the manufacturer's big promises. And critically, this required spatial co-location. You needed your suppliers, manufacturers, and service teams right there next to each other to make it work.
At the same time, we saw huge global players like GE and Siemens enter the market. Now, usually that means local jobs are at risk. How do these regions protect themselves?
This is where territorial servitization really showed its power. The biggest regional benefit in this phase was the strengthening of territorial competitiveness and, crucially, protection from offshoring.
How did that work?
The real value wasn't the physical turbine anymore. It was this integrated knowledge package, all the shared, unspoken, collaborative service skills embedded in that local network. The know-how you need to deliver on a 20-year performance guarantee that is extremely hard to write down and move somewhere else.
It's not just a blueprint you can email.
Exactly. It's a culture of collaboration. So even as these companies went global, they had this powerful reason to keep their most critical, high-value engineering and service teams right there in the original hubs. The local service ecosystem became this non-exportable center of excellence.
So the service layer was like a shield for the manufacturing jobs. And the result was just massive job creation that actually stayed put.
It was huge. Employment ballooned up to 50,000, even 100,000 workers in some of these key regions. And a huge chunk of that was in these high-value service roles.
All right, so let's bring it to the most recent phase. Post-2010, the industry gets hit with the financial crisis. Intense global competition, especially from Asia. The pressure on price was brutal.
It was a brutal test. And to survive, the industry had to make another leap. And again, it was servitization that enabled it. This time, it was digital servitization.
Industry 4.0, big data, all of that.
All of it. The focus shifted completely to advanced sensors, analytics, remote optimization. We're talking about these massive control centers monitoring thousands of turbines. One company was watching 16,000 turbines, 2,000 over 47, all around the world.
And what's key here, the sources point out, is that those new high-skill digital jobs, the data scientists, the algorithm engineers, they were deliberately kept in the home region.
That was the lock-in strategy. By controlling the data and the intellectual property around performance and optimization, the headquarters secured that high-value employment right through the consolidation phase. They shifted the fight away from low-cost manufacturing to superior data-driven reliability. It let them justify a price premium.
And this digital foundation, it seems like it also unlocked the next big frontier,
Yeah.
offshore wind, which is just an entirely different beast, technically.
A completely different beast. But that service knowledge was the precondition for success. They didn't have to start from scratch. They could take all that accumulated onshore service knowledge, the optimization algorithms, the maintenance protocols, and transfer it directly to the much harsher, more complex offshore environment.
So their experience servicing thousands of onshore turbines gave them the toolkit they needed.
It gave them the confidence and the digital toolkit. Without that deep, integrated service foundation, trying to tackle offshore would have been exponentially riskier and more expensive.
So the final outcome for these regions is pretty powerful: resilience and sustained technological leadership. By always emphasizing these advanced integrated services, the European firms built a barrier to entry, they maintained their quality, and they successfully navigated these huge global crises.
So if you pull it all together, this whole multi-decade story, the W2E case really shows that territorial servitization isn't just a business strategy. It's more like an economic adaptation mechanism. It's a path to long-term innovation that's sustained by this constant, conscious effort to maintain that strong value-adding fit.
Between the makers and the thinkers.
Exactly. That hybrid local value chain they built together, that was the ultimate source of their resilience.
Absolutely.
Right.
It shows the real competitive battleground for advanced economies is fought in that service layer, not just on the factory floor. But, the research notes that we always focus on these success stories on the virtuous circle. But it's just as important to understand what happens when it all goes wrong.
Right.
So what configurations or external shocks lead to a value-destroying fit? What causes that synergy to just stagnate or completely break down, leading to a loss of competitiveness? Understanding that risk and figuring out how to avoid it, that might be the key to securing future success for regions all over the world. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of our Digital Servitization Exchange podcast. We hope the insights sparked new ideas, challenged assumptions, and brought clarity to the evolving world of service and digital-driven business models. This podcast is grounded in extensive research across various fields, drawing on years of academic work, case studies, and cutting-edge publications. It also shaped by hands-on experience of our collaboration partners, whose real-world challenges and successes help us to translate theory into practice. If you enjoyed the episode, consider following the podcast and sharing it with colleagues who are navigating the civilization journey. Your support helps us continuing bridging high-quality research-based and practice-proven perspectives straight to your ears. Thank you for tuning in and see you in the next episode.